workshop start.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be here. Hello to the Product Buds community. This is my first event, maybe just like with a lot of other folks here. So I'm excited to participate in this whole week. Like Milap said, I am kicking off the workshop for today, and then I'll also be participating in the Protothon as a mentor. So I'm looking forward to interacting with you throughout the week there as well. And without further ado, I'd love to jump into my presentation. The format of the presentation is such, I like what Milab said, which is being able to get a lot of information precisely, and consistently and very succinctly, so that you can have more time to absorb it, learn it, and then be able to apply it, which is the point of the entire workshop series, right? Everything you pick up here, you'll be actioning into the prototon that you will be participating in. So without further ado, I will jump in. I'm super excited to get started. So we're going to jump right in. And I just want to confirm, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
And everyone can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Sana Ahmed, and I've been doing product management for over 15 years now. I've led 50 plus products to market. Really excited about that. Worked at places from startups to mid-sized companies and big tech companies, including PayPal and Facebook. So super excited to share all the wisdom I've collected over the course of a decade and a half. So let's jump into it. This presentation will be about problem discovery, talking about user and market research. And we're going to do it like a very succinct workshop so that you have more time to jump into applying this. So I do like the suggestion of take a paper and pad if you have one, or type as well as you hear me speak, because what I would like you to do is just start building out your points of what you're going to do, what your task items will be to kick off your protothon. Like Milap said, it'll be about 30 minutes. And we'll take questions in and out of each slide. And then we'll also have questions for the end as well, because I want to leave as much time as possible for you guys to throw any questions you might have. So let's start off with defining what is a problem discovery. Any product development lifecycle begins with a problem. You focus on three things. So number one, the user segments plural, and then you think about what's their problem. In real life, we don't want as many problems for ourselves, but as product professionals, we that's what we get paid to do, is take on people's problems and then start figuring out how to solve for it. And so this is the very beginning of that product development cycle. And the third thing to do after you ask this question is then think about how you're going to solve for that problem that the user is having by building the solution inside the product. So if we're talking about technology, software as a service, like what is that feature enhancement going to look like, for example? Any questions here before I jump into the next one? Pretty straightforward, pretty basic. But the goal for me is to show you that this does not have to be so complicated. You know, there's kind of like this perception that product management is can feel intangible sometimes, but that's not the point. The point is to show you how easy it is and how you can start developing your product like life cycle right away from literally from this workshop. The second thing that I want to define with you is, what is user research? So research around the user specifically looks at user behaviors from both the qualitative and quantitative perspective. I like to think of it as the yin and the yang. So you can't have quantitative data without the empathetic qualitative data, which goes into more detail of what it is that individual users are thinking. And of course, the quantitative data is like that bigger picture of the sets of users from painting that bigger broader picture. And so by having those two things and putting it together, you have a complete 360 of what the user is thinking, desiring, what problems they're having, and what they might appreciate for the solution that you end up coming with. And those three things within user research consists of number one, individual focus groups. So this isn't a guessing game. When you think about solving the problem for the user, it's not trying to scratch your head and try to figure it out on your own. The beauty is in that the answers are in conversations, and specifically conversations with your specific user segments. And so for those of you that might be shy in talking to people, don't try to reframe that for yourself as I'm really excited to figure out what that mystery is, what the problem the person is facing. And so you can overcome your shyness to that degree. And for the people who love talking, well, here's a really great reason for you to approach people. They're always happy to talk about themselves. So always keep the questions focused on their needs and their problems. The second thing around user research is observing behaviors from a big picture quantitative report. And so I mentioned this a little bit earlier with quantitative data is taking sets of user data. So if there's one user segment that you choose, user segment A, and let's say there's 1,000 people in that user segment, there's a lot of product management tools out there that you can use, from things like Looker or any other tools that start picking up on the behavior of the users, literally from where are they clicking around on the screen, right? And inside the software or inside the product, to start seeing, hey, where are they clicking? Where might they be dropping off? Where might be a disconnect of why they're dropping off, and then being able to zone in on that more and drill down to be like, okay, so the data from the big picture is showing me something specific, and now I got to go look into that, and that might inform the focus group conversations that I end up having with that audience segment. And the third thing is being able to do UX and UI wireframes and gathering feedback from your user segments. So I just want to break that down for a second. Um, for any of you who have been doing product management to a degree, you may be familiar with the process early on in the discovery and user research is trying to sketch out wireframes. Literally, you could just like doodle on a screen in terms of how you think you may solve for that problem in the product. And you start building these frames, these wireframes right next to each other to see, well, if I get the user to click here and then click here and then go there, hopefully we'll be able to get them from point A to B to help them solve for their problems. And that's a really great visual. It's needed. And it's something that as a product manager, we would end up partnering with our other team members within product, which would include like UX designers, UI designers, and sitting down with them, showing them your wireframes and getting a collective perspective on this is what we're trying to do. Like, what is the best way to be able to solve it? And once you're able to agree as a team, then you can step back and take those wireframes literally to the user segments and show them, hey, this is how we're thinking of being able to solve your problem. Um, how would you feel if we laid out your solution in this way? Depending on the time and resources you have, you may be able to take that from a low fidelity wireframe sketch into a higher fidelity wireframe sketch, but that's an assessment you have to do with your UX and UI team members to see when they could do that, if they can do that, and what the time frame is, because you want to get that in a that feedback back in a timely manner, because you have to keep moving along this discovery phase. I'm going to pause here and see if anyone has any questions.
So I think we had a question a little while ago from Christina
Sure.
in the chat. What exactly is a user segment, and then what's the target audience?
Sure. Great question, Christina. So a user segment is a segment which is like, think of a cluster or a group of people, a crowd of people that represents one type of user behavior. So if we were to take that into like a real life scenario, like I'm going to make a very broad statement, like your introverted friends versus your extroverted friends, right? Like you have these two groups, and your introverted friends are the ones who don't really like to interact with so many different people. So they might have their small group of friends that they interact with, and that's it. And then you may have your extroverted group of friends who are like chatty catty. I'm going to go up and go speak to anyone and have a conversation, which is completely opposite of your introverted friends, right? And so when we think of a user segment, we want to think of them literally as a person, a user that has specific characteristics and behaviors. And then you're able to identify them in that way. Specifically, when we're talking about software and products, technology products, what we're looking to do is see what kind of user traits are there within the product. So if there's like 3 features inside of a mobile app, for example, you might find that one segment uses like only one feature. And then there's like another set of users who use like feature 2 and 3. So that's how you start identifying a user segment. They're basically like a persona, and maybe we could do like a follow-up with you guys, or if you want to follow up with me, maybe in the Slack channel, I'm happy to kind of answer the questions there. But for the buyer persona or the user persona that you end up doing as a product manager, you're literally trying to make like these I don't want to say fake personas, but personas that are based off of real people. So John Doe, Jane Smith, like Aerosmith. I'm just making that up. And each of these people, you would then end up like having a picture and having like a set of like a slide on here's what Jane Doe likes to do. Here's some of the problems she faces, and these are some of the solutions that she's looking for. And then seeing like, okay, these are some of the things on the mobile app that she's interacting with. So, okay, we can target Jane Doe by coming up with a solution that would kind of work with her needs. So that's how you would sort of take a user segment. It's based off of a user persona, but think of like multiple user personas that are all similar on certain characteristics. So the second question, Joseph, you said was, and so what is an audience segment? Um, yeah, is that correct? So an audience segment would be then it's almost a little interchangeable with user segments and audience segment, but audience segment is a little bit more broad, depending on what your application of it is. So like when we think of user personas and user segments in the context of a product manager, it's literally thinking about that one individual person and what all their behaviors are on the platform. And then an audience segment could be a bit more broad. And it might be something like a product marketer might approach you with as a product manager, which I've done both. I've done both product management and product marketing. So a product marketer might approach a product manager and say, hey, I have these 2, 3 audience segments that are looking for this feature. Like, would you guys be able to think about like how we can maybe put that in the solution for the product, because it's going to help them solve X, Y, and Z problems that they're having. And so audience segment then ends up being an extension of the user segment. I would say it's becomes longer and broader, and that's something that people on the marketing side, especially product managers, would use, because they are then segmenting the same user personas or the same user segments, but in a marketing setting, in their marketing tools like books of business, like Salesforce, for example. That's where they end up like segmenting out the customers. It might be in other marketing tools like their own marketing analytic tools, which would then they would label audience segments out in that way. So it's almost like a bit of a language sort of change based off of the application of like who's saying it and why they're saying it. But ultimately, they both should be mapping back to each other. User segments should be mapping back to audience segments. There should not be such a discourse, like a discourse, or running in different directions of those two things, because as product management and as product marketing, you want to be on the same page because you guys are obsessing over the customer and you're helping solve for their same problem. So you want to define your segments in the same way. Does that make sense to you guys?
Is there a difference when you go from designing a product or pretty much developing or building a product for B2B versus B2C? Would that also come into play if you had to address a user segment or an audience?
So B2B and B2C, I think the first thing to just sort of note is that they are literally two different product sets, right? The products are going to be built and behave differently. And so as a result, those user slash audience segments will be different. So for example, with B2B, you're building products for other businesses. And so that's has several, you have to keep several things in mind, which is learning how to take even broader sets of users, because usually now we're kind of talking about like larger companies, enterprise companies. So you're not going to have like maybe 20, 50 customers. You're going to have customers in the thousands. And so those user segments, you definitely want to start learning how to start segmenting out and keeping that very clear and clean within your cross team so that everyone is on the same page. And the sales cycle for that will end up being longer as well. So everything with the product is going to be different. So product strategy, the way you think about things, the way you build and iterate will have like longer sprints, if you will. And then for B2C products, you end up having, you're selling directly to the customer. And so in that case, it's, in my experiences, it's been faster sales cycles and you're able to iterate on sprints much faster. And so things like that we're talking about here, like being able to do focus groups, being able to quickly segment out the customers, all of that's going to happen at a much faster rate. And then what that ends up doing for audience segments is that you might have a little bit more maybe in that case, because you might have very different kinds of users. So like without even maybe meaning to do that, you might have like, let's say a dozen or two different like user segments, versus in a B2B product, you might have like a very umbrella, like a group of like 5 segments, because you are starting to realize that each of them have very specific needs with commonalities. And so you just have to, I think, for as a product manager, for when you guys step into those roles, like that is the first thing you want to figure out, is this product B2B or B2C? And then one of the first things you want to do is start understanding all the different users that are there, how they're segmented, and how many segments do exist, because that's going to then help you start scoping how to prioritize that research. Like, you know, you can't go after everything at once. As a product manager, you just have very limited time. And so it's very important to look at what you're playing with in your sandbox and then see if there's like top 2, 3 user segments that also on the marketing side represent like significant audience segments that drive revenue, etc. And you want to prioritize accordingly. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of taking your question and then showing the application, how you would actually apply what you're asking in a product management setting.
Oh, it does. I just wanted to know at what point basically we really have to ask ourselves this question and then segment. Is it at the beginning? Is it pretty much past that stage? But yeah, thank you very much
Yeah,
for that.
definitely
Hi,
towards the
Sana.
beginning. Yeah.
For the sake of time, we can take other questions on our Slido. The link will be shared in the chat as well, so that we allow Sana to complete the content she has for now.
Okay, great. Yeah. And just to finalize that answer to that question, you do want to do segmenting at the very beginning of the product development cycle, because you don't want to run in different directions. So the second thing that we want to end up defining here is what is market research? And so Here we are talking about, sorry, this would be the third thing. So market research is looking at the big picture market landscape. And what I mean by that is you've done your research on the individual user, what their problems are. You started to validate that problem by speaking to specific user segments, seeing that it's not a problem of one user, but there's actually a cluster of users within a segment that have this issue. And now the third thing is market research. And this is important because you take 2 steps back and you want to make sure you're not myopic and you're not looking only at one part of the bigger picture. You need to account the bigger picture. So what market category is this product that you're developing in? What is the competitive landscape? So who else is in this market category? And what kind of problems or how are they solving the same problem that you're looking to solve for the customer? Is it better? Is it worse? It's very important to ask yourself these questions and start getting answers in your research. And the third thing you want to do is be able to refer to research reports. So what that means is if there's like analyst reports, if there's industry research reports, there's so many that are out there, right? Depending on, again, what market category your product is in, you would go look for those things and see what's happening in that, specific part of the market. Who are the key players? What segments are they like tackling in terms of customers? And how do they rank? Where do you sort of go from there? And I think big name research reports you could go after are like Forrester. That's one. eMarketer has like a lot as well. Gartner is like another one. So those are things that you want to keep in mind because you have to keep the smaller picture with the bigger picture in mind. And so this is a part now we're going to start talking about actioning the research. So everyone get your keyboard ready or pens and paper ready because you will use this information for the hackathon or protothon, sorry. So problem discovery, user and market research in action. How do all these things work together? How do you piece them together, right? So you start with, we talked about number one, the problem discovery. You're starting with the user. As a recap, you're asking a series of questions to formulate the problem statement. And I'll get into details with that in the following slide. And then you use the problem statement to guide the rest of your research and development, which the rest of that looks like user research and market research. And then going deeper, you're validating that user research with specific users, if you can speak to them to see if the problem that you think that they have is correct and if it's significant enough that they're looking for a solution. And once you validate that, you work with your UX and UI teams by consulting with them on the wireframes and figuring that out, coming up with a set of wireframes to ultimately end up showing your user segment group. And then you review that internally. Make sure that number one, you review that internally with your teams. Your teams got the buy-ins. And second, you're going and you will show your user group. So you're going to do this quick validation with them to see now that you got the problem right, and you want to show them how you're going to design the solution for the problem. This saves a lot of money. I can't stress this enough. Like every place that I've been at, especially including PayPal and Facebook as well, like you're dealing with so many different teams. It's much bigger companies. And you have like 40, 50, 60,000 team members, right? And so if you end up at a big tech company like that, when you ask people to help you do something and try to get them on board, you have to persuade them and convince them that you know what you're doing is correct and that you brought in the right key stakeholders to basically finalize your plan of action as you're moving forward. Without those two things, it's very hard to get buy-in and you're just kind of like stuck from being able to move forward in your product development cycle, and you don't want to be stuck. And then the third piece is market research. And once you strengthen the product development after the validation, you look at the competitors in your market categories. Like I kind of mentioned a few ways of doing that and delivering, and see how they're delivering solutions to the problem, or they might not be at all. And you want to challenge yourself to stay in scope and deliver the solution that you're coming up with as a unique value proposition. So you don't want to make your product development generic. You want it to be innovative as you go forward, right? So it's like, for example, I'll just give an example with the very Zoom tool that we're using. I have my mouse, and it's like, okay, some user groups complain that like I can't see the mouse cursor. So it's like, okay, we made the mouse cursor bigger. So that's like a generic enhancement. That's not really a value. It's not it doesn't make you a unique value proposition in the eyes of your user groups, right? Now, if we went into detail with that and said, oh, okay, the person's having a problem using not seeing the arrow, like what are they trying to do with the arrow? Oh, they were trying to annotate and be able to highlight specific things on the screen. Okay, as Zoom's product managers, why don't we come up with an easy set of annotation tools where I can see it pretty quickly, and be able to click on it, and be able to highlight the specific things that are needed as a presenter, because that's what this user group is asking for. So it allows you to, that gives you the perspective, right? You're not just building things for the sake of it, but you're always trying to keep yourself unique in the process, because that's how you keep your doors open, quite frankly, as a product management team for the company. And for the workshop exercises, you guys can take notes here. I know I have, I think, another 10 minutes, so I won't take all of 10 minutes explaining this slide, but I will take enough time so that you guys can follow along. So let's do this in the order of left to right for your workshop. And this is to get you ready for your Protothon week. So first off, with problem discovery, let's pick a user segment for a product that you want to build or solve for. Just to clarify with the Product Buds team, for the Protothon, are the team members building from scratch, or are they able to maybe pick like an existing product and see how they can make that better?
Yes, good question. Yeah, teams will be building from scratch based on the prompt we give them, which is like very quite broad. So there's not really any limitations, but teams will be forming something brand new.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna go the innovative route. So that's exciting. You guys don't have any benchmarks. The sky's the limit here. So think about a problem that you're solving for, and think about who that user segment is going to be. User segment, start with one user persona and see if that user persona is multiplied by a significant amount of people to turn that into a user segment. And understand a big point that is preventing that user segment from achieving a very specific goal. And so once you start, this is where you start discovering and uncovering what the actual problem is and how you're going to best solve for it. Now, what you're going to do, number 3, is formulate a hypothesis. So what that means is you're going to say, I think I could solve for this problem by picking this solution. And you're going to articulate that hypothesis as a problem statement in true product management fashion, which is customer X wants to achieve Y, but is unable to because of Z. So you're identifying the customer, you're figuring out what their goal is, and then you're figuring out why they're unable to achieve it. And then you continue and say, I hypothesize to solve problem Z for customer X in the following way. And continuing that statement, you go into, I'm going to build product A with B feature or enhancement to help the user achieve Y. So I tried to keep your XYZs consistent with each other. And again, so just to repeat that one more time, articulating the problem statements and the hypothesis is customer X wants to achieve Y, but is unable to do so because of Z. I hypothesize to solve problem Z for customer X in the following way. I will build product A with B feature or enhancement to help the user achieve Y. And that is your basically your foundation of how you're going to kick off your Protothon this week. So I'm really excited for you guys to see what you come up with. And then now the second piece to this is user research. Validate your hypothesis with the sample set of users that we were talking about, right? Someone asks, what's a user segment? What's a what's a user persona? So user persona, we talked about uh, um, having a certain set of characteristics. We put them in a set of user segments. And now within that user segment, we're going to speak to a specific group of people and have focus group sessions with them. So for those of you that are going to be building a product, if you can throughout the week, since you do want to solve for real problems that exist, talk to real people. Don't be shy. In this case, it could be a few people, but know that in real life work setting, that could be, you could be talking to like a dozen, 2 dozen people. It could be, something like luncheons. You could be doing Zoom conversations, literally like the ones we're having here. And you also, within this user research, you want to be able to show them the wireframes we spoke about. And if you can look up any data sets to understand their behaviors, that would be great. So let me just asterisk that with, in a product management situation, you would have a set of data points to look at because it would be an existing product and you'd have, data coming in and looking at from different tools. But in the case of this situation with the Protothon, you may want to just see if you could find some broad research that might help you sort of inform the rest of that user research. So like you're doing a lot of qualitative research, but maybe a little bit on the quantitative side will be being able to figure out some general facts and figures that you could use to paint a bigger picture of yourself. And the third piece is the market research piece, which is who who else is solving the problem. So I don't want you to be paranoid and sit there biting your fingers like, oh my God, are there competitors out there and are they beating me? That's not the way to go about it. As a product manager, you get to be a little bit more objective. And so hopefully that allows you not to get overly emotional, upset, but you do have an original idea, but you must do the due diligence to see if there's anyone else that might be approaching the problem in a similar way. And again, make sure you can concretely answer how they're solving for that problem and judge it, discern it in a way is, is it better than what I was thinking? Is it worse? And let's use that information to inform how I can make sure that my solution ends up being strong and that I account for making sure that I'm practical for the user, I'm interesting, and I'm also competitive so that I can speak against the market landscape as well. So if you can do these three things and set yourself up for the Protothon, you will be at a good start here to begin your race, if you will. One last thing I just wanted to mention here. Key tips for user research and validation in real time is that do not over engineer. There's so many different data points. There's so many different questions you can be asking. Just like the Protothon in real life, you will have a limited amount of time to figure things out as a product manager. So you have to make sure that you get all the essential research in place and that you do not over engineer and make things too complex that it's hard for you to complete it. Which goes into the second thing, which is scope your time and research accordingly. You don't want to make it into like a 6-month task. That's not going to happen. Maybe in like legacy enterprise companies, that used to be the case a few years ago, but in this fast-paced tech world that we are living in, you have sprints that you work in, and those sprints can be 1 to 4 weeks at a time. So you're not going to have all the time in the world. And the third thing is do not assume, meaning don't assume what you think the user needs when you can ask them, right? And this is where when you do the Protothon, make sure that you can find a group of people that you're able to speak to. Like that will, if you can get this right, you'll be able to do the rest of your product development so much more easier. The products that end up failing are the ones that do not align to the user. And then it's like the user might have asked for an apple, but then you're like, here's an orange and I think it's better for you. And the user will turn around and be like, no, I did not want an orange. I still want an apple to solve for my need. And the last thing is always measure all your efforts so that you can use your resources wisely. If you cannot measure something that you do in any part of your user research and market discovery, then really think twice about whether it's a good idea to do it or not, because everything you do, you need to start having data points and benchmarks, because this is the first part of the product development cycle, and you're going to, at the end of this, have a complete product, but you will come back and look at all the steps you took and see what worked and what didn't. And it's very hard to discern what worked and what didn't if you're not measuring it, right? So think about like those metrics of how you're going to move forward that way. And that is the end of my presentation. I did want to end with saying you're very welcome to contact me. So I do have a screen name on this Product Bud Slack group, which is Sana Ahmed, but feel free to reach out to me as well on sana@sanaahmed.com. That's my email. Connect with me on LinkedIn, which Grace was nice enough to put in the group chat, linkedin.com/in/Sana Ahmed. And for attending this workshop, feel free to enroll in I created a very short 10-minute course, just like if you're in between a break, you're having a lunch break, dinner break, what have you. I wanted people just to be able to get a grasp of my 15 years of experience with product marketing and product management in 10 minutes. So feel free to check out bit.ly/free-PMM. Again, that's bit.ly/free-PMM. And for the Product Buds team, if you guys want to put that under the YouTube like description with this workshop, it'll probably just make it a complete experience for everyone. So yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. And I'm looking at my watch. We still have 15 minutes, which is great news. So we can continue the Q&A, and I'm eager to hear from all of you.
Yes, thank you. Awesome workshop. As expected for everyone else, there are tons of content that we just got. So hopefully everyone's taking notes, staying attentive. And
if you liked Sarah's talk, leave a reaction with your Zoom reactions, a clap reaction, or whatever your emotion is. And in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you like her workshop? 10, 9, 8, 7? Feel free to, oh, somebody just said 1,000.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice. I appreciate it. Let's go to 2,000 next time. We'll do that. We'll go to 2,000 for the Protothon this
Okay,
week.
somebody just sent like 1 and like 10 zeros. So I guess we passed 2,000.
Great.
Milab, you can feel free to share the slider.
good. Let's pull up some questions.
Sure. I think I have to stop sharing, right?
I think so. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Oh, thanks for the love, everyone. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Product Buds, for having me. I love doing this stuff. You'll find within your product management career that there are people who love what they do so much, but they also love being able to share that passion with other people. And so you do want to align yourself with people like that, because it'll only just help your career in a joyful, fruitful way, and you want to be able to enjoy product management. And that's my goal for anything I do and all the interactions I have. So I'm looking forward to more Product Buds conversations.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I guess we can jump into it. Everyone can see my screen, right? So we can just go into the top where it says our first questions. So Lucen asked, how do you determine whether a problem among your selected user segment is worth solving?
Yeah, great question, Lucent. So one of the ways to immediately think about that, I think of it in two ways, is how many people are having that problem, right? So I mentioned that a little bit earlier in the workshop, which is it like one person that's having the problem, or is it a large group of people having that problem. And so that's one way to gauge to see if that problem is significant. And if it's significant, then thinking about the second criteria, which is if we solve for this problem from a roadmap perspective, is it going to help us be number one, competitive? Is it going to help us retain our customers and create great experiences? And number three, which all product managers always have to consider, is like, is it also going to help us make ROI, right? Is it going to help us make money for the company? So in terms of like retaining users, having more users come back, or being able to get brand new users as well. So those are some things you definitely want to think about when you're thinking about what is worth solving for, and am I, thinking about the right user segment.
Awesome, super helpful. Which leads us, I guess, to a pretty good segue to our next question. Given that everything is virtual, somebody asked, how do you do user research virtually? Given that like the Protothon is virtual, and maybe even if they have a project in the future that they want to do, and things are still closed.
Yeah, that's also another great question. It's this is the beauty of working in tech, right? We have all these technology tools that are available to us, and a lot of them digital and very easy to use, right? I also mentioned, like, when you do things like focus groups, right? You can use the very tool that we're using right now, which is Zoom. I know that's Slido. This tool is designed, I think, for like live events, right? Like this one, to be able to answer questions in real time. But there, you would be able to incorporate something like this as well into what you're doing. So for example, if you got a group of your users on a focus group session, and you also told them like what you're trying to figure out, helping them solve for, what you think the hypothesis is, and how you want to approach it and get their feedback. You could even use a chat group within Zoom and say, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in. Or if your Zoom, I know some of the more premium versions of Zoom allow you to raise your hands, so you could do that as well. I would say, for the sake of the Protothon, keep it super simple. You don't want to bog yourself down with like so many different tools, because you want to keep yourself focused, save your time so that you're getting all the information, the research you need, and save the rest of the time to actually be able to apply that research. So my challenge to you guys for the Protothon is choose one tool to do your user research, and just stay consistent with that to help you time manage right now. And into the future of your product management careers, you'll have plenty of different options of tools to choose from.
Awesome. Yes, super helpful advice. I strongly suggest, yeah, stick to one tool. Don't get too crazy, because you do only have so many hours, I guess, to do this until you move on to the next step. Cool. Moving on, let's see. Is there any difference in the process outlined for a non-digital product? I assume
Is that
this is
Lan Ray?
Yeah.
Sure. Lan Ray, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. So is there a difference in the process outline for non-digital products? That's a great question. I would want to ask you more about that. Like, what do you mean by non-digital products? I'll take a jab at it, but if you answer within the chat or here, maybe we can go a little bit more specific. But non-digital products would be like usually technical products, if you will. And when you think of a product, it doesn't have to be like the softwares or mobile apps or any technology product. It could be something like Coca-Cola, right? Like a candy bar. It could be a soda pop. And so when I think of non-digital products, I think of offline products, and a lot of those can sort of fall under CPG, for example. That's probably one like non-digital product that's like very obvious, very offline, very in real life and tangible. And so the process for that would still be similar to what we discussed. The only thing is that you might have a little bit more formalities to go through. So the teams that you may have, you may not have like a UX or UI designer. If it's a non-digital product, you might have someone that's like in product packaging, if you will, for if it's specifically CPG, a consumer packaged product, and you might be working like with that kind of designer. And in that case, versus like in the case that we are here, where you have UX and UI designers to quickly iterate and draw things out. It's just be mindful of the various different teams that you would have within that setting, and use the same philosophy that we talked about here. And it would still be a good framework for you to get started. Just maybe ask the question, if you find yourself in a company like that with a product like that, to try to learn about what their processes are so that you don't miss any steps there. But with this workshop, you have the right framework in mind. So don't fret too much of, being able to start from zero.
So good answer. Hopefully that helped Monterey. But if you do have any, yeah, there we go. I think she said in the chat that it was super helpful. So
Great.
That's good. Cool. I think we'll take one more question before we just go into announcements and things like that. Are there any questions here, Sana, that stick out to you? If not, we can just move on to the next question.
Yeah, let me just try to read it super quick. I really like this question of how do you include metrics on the product that we need to build for the Protothon? Can you give an example of what that could be? So that's literally like thinking about going back to the problem statement, right? And the problem statement of this is I'm solving for problem X and solving it with this Y solution. And really, when you think about it like that, then you start literally take like a pen and paper and the line segment and draw yourself like a user journey of like 3 to 4 line segments from the very beginning to the end. And you're trying to get the user from literally from point A to point B, right? Of helping them resolve their problem. And in each of those line segments, think about what steps that the user needs to take and how you can measure that step. And if you can do that, then that really will set you up for success. That's like taking so many complex concepts and simplifying it in a way that you'll be able to digest and be able to use immediately. And so I would say stick with that, and that will help you scale into the future, into your product management careers.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, for everyone else that didn't have, I guess, did still have questions and things like that, feel free to drop them in the Slack channel, the Protothon channel, and we'll try to answer all the questions that you have. But yeah, I mean, I guess we can stop the recording here.